Hi, I'm Naveen Day. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau defends the carbon tax, saying fighting climate change does not conflict with affordability. The Toronto Argonauts secured their 19th Grey Cup win over the weekend, but it was quarterback Nick Arbuckle who stole the show. And a former Humboldt Broncos player will be the focus of a 6-part TV series next year.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is defending the carbon tax on the world stage and argues that environmental progress is being threatened by misinformation. He spoke at a conference held by the anti-poverty group Global Citizen ahead of the G20 Leaders Summit in Brazil. He says fighting climate change is not in conflict with affordability.
Actually has become a way of helping with affordability, of putting more money in the pockets of people who are struggling. Because when we talk about fighting climate change, everyone has the sense that, oh no, big businesses and millionaires are going to find ways around it. And it's always hardworking consumers and ordinary folks that bear the brunt of the changes. And what we've had to do in Canada, what we've successfully done, is change that dynamic so our fight against climate change goes hand in hand with affordability. But that's where, as I was talking about earlier, we're facing a level of attacks, of misinformation, of disinformation by people who are saying, no, we have to stop the fight against climate change in Canada so we can put a little more money in your pockets, even though that's exactly the wrong thing for the planet. And it's actually the wrong thing for money in their pockets. And that's a lot of what the next year's election is going to be about in Canada.
Shoppers, governments, and businesses are keeping a close eye on the Canada Post strike. It began early Friday after failing to reach a new contract with about 55,000 workers represented by the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. The timing of the strike is concerning for many people as the busy Christmas season looms. The federal government recently moved to end labor disputes at ports in BC and Montreal by sending them to binding arbitration. However, Federal Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon has currently ruled out federal intervention to end the strike or bring in an arbitrator. Members from the Cup W in Lethbridge continue to hold a picket line in downtown Lethbridge and are continually hopeful for a favorable agreement to be reached before any federal intervention.
Definitely, we'd always be preferred to have a negotiated contract. It's always a better option than being legislated back to work and trying to put our rights into question as citizens of this country. At the end of the day, we're here because we've got to be here, unfortunately. We were forced into this position by the corporation, being unwilling to offer us a reasonable contract. So it's unfortunate where we're at.
And starting Tuesday, Albertans can send their mail to designated Alberta government offices. The list of drop-off locations is available on alberta.ca. No stamps will be required. Alberta's health minister delivered an update to the province's refocused healthcare system. Adriana LaGrange says Acute Care Alberta will be the new agency responsible for overseeing hospitals. The refocus splits Alberta's healthcare system into 4 health agencies that will oversee the priority sectors of primary care, acute care, continuing care, and mental health and addiction.
So this past July, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction stood up Recovery Alberta. And today, Primary Care Alberta becomes a legal entity and officially begins its work under the leadership of CEO Dr. Kim Simmons, who is here today. Soon, these 2 provincial health agencies will be joined by the agency responsible for acute care, which will be known as Acute Care Alberta. Acute care is a significant part of the healthcare system, with complexities that require us to be thoughtful and intentional. So Albertans see tangible improvements to the healthcare delivery.
LaGrange adds the work to create the agency is a bit delayed, but it is expected to be up and running by next spring. And a new community report from a charity says the paychecks of Calgarians are not keeping up with rising costs. Vibrant Communities Calgary says the hourly wage a worker in the city could need to cover the essentials is $24.45. That's almost 63% higher than the Alberta minimum wage, which currently sits at $15 an hour. The group says government policies like affordable childcare have helped, but those savings are being overwhelmed by the rising costs of housing and food. Alberta had the highest minimum wage in Canada in 2018, but it is now tied with Saskatchewan for the lowest. Here in Lethbridge, the average living wage is down 60 cents from last year to $20 an hour. And following the stretch of balmy fall weather, Calgary drivers woke up to see their vehicles covered in inches of snow. The dump made for a slow and slippery commute to work on Monday morning. Just look at that over there. That's Stony Trail this morning. Environment and Climate Change Canada issued a snowfall warning for Calgary, cautioning that 10 to 15 centimeters of snow was expected to fall throughout the day. Calgary police say 20 crashes were reported between midnight and 8 a.m. 16 of those were non-injury. One of the crashes, though, was a hit and run. Former Humboldt Bronco Ryan Strechnitsky will be the focus of a 6-part television series on AMI next year, focusing on his goal of making the Paralympic basketball team. The 25-year-old from Airdrie was paralyzed from the chest down in 2018 when a semi-trailer ran a stop sign and barreled into the path of the Humboldt Broncos bus in rural Saskatchewan.
It's my show that'll be broadcasted on AMI in May and June, and they're kind of following me around for the next year or so. My basketball career, training, a little bit of hockey here today. So they're kind of following me around and interviewing a lot of people that have helped influence my life and supported me along this journey in hopes that I can make the Paralympics one day. You know, the first year was a learning curve, learning the sport, learning what I can and can't do, but pushing my limits to try and get better. And so I trained a lot over the summer, got to meet a lot of people, and I'm hoping to make the national team in the next couple of years before the next Paralympics.
And if you don't have a reason to smile, the Holiday Smile Cookie campaign is back. From today till November 24th, 100% of the proceeds from cookies sold in Lethbridge will be donated to support Logan Boulet's Green Shirt Day fundraiser and the Logan Boulet Endowment Fund. Stepha Pinn, West Highland Tim Hortons owner, says last year the campaign raised $9.8 million across Canada. She also says how much they hope to collect this year.
The answer is more. The answer is always more, right? So, you know, we've got some great organizations, you know, and bringing awareness to this is so important to us. So I know we've had a ton of pre-orders in. So if you have an organization, you have friends or family, please come to the Tim Hortons locations and pick up those Smile cookies. All of it will go back to the local community here to raise more awareness, or the Tim Hortons Foundation camps as well. And that also impacts youth in our area as well. The group last year, we sold $43,000 worth of cookies. I can tell you, starting today, we already feel like we're ahead. Normally, this particular location last year did about 500 cookies a day. Our goal is at least 600 cookies per day, just out of this one location alone. The Boulet family, they are so well connected and they know so many people, and certainly that helps not only bring awareness to the Logan Boulet and the Green Shirt Day, but it also brings awareness to the Tim Hortons Foundation camps.
So honored to be part of the Holiday Smile campaign and celebrate the Boulet family. My hometown is Humboldt, Saskatchewan, so I have a special connection to the Boulet family and the community of Humboldt. So to be included and to, you know, make cookies for a good cause is just such an honor and such a privilege.
We told Tim Hortons last year we'd do it for 1 year, and it was so successful, they asked us again. We said, sure, we'll do it for 1 more year, that's it. But it's an amazing charitable fundraiser, and we hope that other groups will step up next year and help out, because there's lots to do and lots of fun, and it's Tim Hortons, right? It's an iconic Canadian emblem and coffee.
In 2018, Humboldt Broncos defenseman Logan Boulet passed away from his injuries just 1 day after the horrific Humboldt Broncos bus crash that claimed 16 lives. His parents, Bernadine and Toby Boulet, volunteered to donate his organs so that 6 lives could be saved. The City of Lethbridge, alongside 6 partner agencies, are kicking off their annual Christmas Hope campaign. The partnership will ensure that less fortunate individuals and families throughout the city will still have access to food, clothing, and toys to celebrate the holidays without stress. BCN's Landon Hickok has the story.
Christmas Hope is entering their 18th holiday season this year, with the demand for donations higher than ever. This year, the city of Lethbridge is partnering with the Interfaith Food Bank, Lethbridge Food Bank, Salvation Army, Lethbridge Family Services, Angel Tree, My City Care Shop of Wonders, and Volunteer Lethbridge. Together, the partnership is hoping to provide service to 10,000 people in Lethbridge this year with food, clothing, and toys for children.
The launch at Christmas is really what is going to allow us to not only serve the community now, but it's going to bring in the bulk of the support that we need to identify what we can do in the coming year. And so our Christmas campaign is everything and is expected, hopefully, to bring in the bulk of the cash that we'll need to keep serving our community day to day.
Each organization will share resources with each other, including hampers containing non-perishable food items. On top of donations, all organizations are asking for volunteers wherever and whenever possible.
We rely directly and almost exclusively on donations of toys and money and things like that. So it always is kind of a challenge, and there are a lot of unknowns to say, are we going to have enough resources this year to support the families in need? Are we going to have enough to be able to do Toys for Tots? So there's always some unknowns. That's kind of where we are. We're always looking for donations of toys and money and people and volunteering, and that's kind of the big ticket items that we're looking for.
Additional information, including what items to donate, as well as further updates, will be featured on christmashope.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
The University of Lethbridge has a new Canada Research Chair thanks to $311 million in funding announced by the Government of Canada's CRC program. Dr. Tiffany Heinbel-Preet is an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology at the university and a member of the Blood Tribe. She has been named a Tier 2 Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Resiliency, and she joins me now via Zoom. Dr. Heinbel-Preet, what made you want to pursue this area of research?
As a Blackfoot person, I've been taught that balance is the mission of the Siksikaitsitapi, and that means Blackfoot Confederacy. And unfortunately, colonization has disrupted this balance that we have maintained in our lives. And so the colonial practices and policies that have led to the creation of negative outcomes for Indigenous peoples, including the forced relocation onto reserves, the stolen children era, including the residential school and the 60 scoops, as well as the current welfare system. And so these practices and policies have created an imbalance in Indigenous people's lives. And so with the CRC appointment, I want to be able to use it as a way to reinforce and investigate the ways that communities, specifically within Blackfoot Confederacy, are currently using, renewing, and adapting traditional teachings of resilience.
And we as Canadians are learning of the intergenerational trauma that has stemmed from Canada's past towards our Indigenous people. So can you explain to us how your research will address that and what outcome you're hoping for?
My current program of work revolves around the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action. And so with the CRC, I plan to continue working in this area. And so there's a focus on the impacts of the colonial education system on Indigenous children and families, and how this trauma has been inflicted through the loss of language, cultural practices, the physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual abuse that happened in these colonial institutions. And I think it's really important to engage in truth-telling and to better educate ourselves as Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples within Canada about what our colonial history has been, that has been whitewashed in our education system. And I think we need to understand what has happened to us as Indigenous peoples so that we can be in a better position to heal. And so I want to be able to share the findings that come out of this phase of the research, and then work on building relationships and partnerships with Indigenous community members who are interested in being a part of this project to co-create a resiliency model that is grounded in our Indigenous knowledges.
That was Dr. Tiffany Heinbel-Preet, Canadian Research Chair in Indigenous Resiliency and Assistant Sociology Professor at the University of Lethbridge. U.S. President Joe Biden has reportedly made a major change in U.S. policy toward Ukraine, authorizing it for the first time to use U.S.-supplied missiles to hit targets deeper into Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters it was apparent that the outgoing Biden administration was looking to provoke further escalation. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky responded by saying any long-range missiles by Ukraine's forces to take aim at Russia would, quote, speak for themselves. And fans of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were left stunned by their favored team's Grey Cup loss to the Toronto Argonauts. The Bombers lost 41-24 to Toronto at BC Place Stadium in Vancouver. Winnipeg has appeared in 5 straight Grey Cup championship games, but suffered its 3rd consecutive loss. It was the 2nd time in 3 years the Bombers lost the championship to an underdog Argonaut team, and they were also upset by the Montreal Alouettes last year. This win marks 19 Grey Cup wins for the Argos, the most in CFL history. Canadian press reporter Gemma Carson-Smith gives us a recap of Toronto's win over Winnipeg and how MVP Nick Arbuckle stole the show.
It was a tight game through 3 quarters, really. The Argos broke away in the 4th quarter and really took over. That's what will happen if you give up 4 interceptions across a game. It's a game the Winnipeg Blue Bombers know that they didn't play their best, but the Argos also really showed out, especially Nick Arbuckle, who was in as the quarterback, making his first ever Grey Cup start. This is a guy who's 31 years old and almost walked away from football professionally in the spring. So great story for him. He was named the game's MVP, and he deserved it. He really showed out. He also did the press conference with his 4-year-old and 1-year-old daughters sitting with him, which was pretty adorable. Very cute kids, and was pretty special. He talked about how this is a memory that they might not remember. His younger daughter is a year old, so it might not be a memory that she has forever, but there'll always be pictures of them on the field with Daddy, in the confetti, doing snow angels after he won the Grey Cup.
Recapping one of our top stories, Calgary woke up to its first major snowfall of the season. Environment Canada issued a snowfall warning for the city with about 10 to 15 centimeters expected. The blanket of snow caused a significant impact during the Monday morning commute and led to some transit delays as a result of the weather. The latest polls show the federal Conservatives with a 20-point lead over the Trudeau Liberals. Can they maintain that lead heading into the next election, though? Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas will offer her thoughts on the subject next. And when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email to info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, visit our website anytime to check out our number of stories and interviews.
You know, many Canadians are quite concerned that an emissions cap on Canadian energy will not only kill jobs in Canada, but send many of those jobs to the United States. Now, to chat about this in more detail is Lethbridge Conservative MP Rachel Thomas, who joins us from her home in Lethbridge. Now, Rachel, even Canada's former Finance Minister, Bill Morneau, says the cap on our energy sector is just not a good idea.
Yeah, Hal, I think, look, at the end of the day, you know, Canada produces oil and gas in an incredibly responsible manner. It's an industry that we should be proud of. It provides high-paying jobs while supplying a commodity that we need and the world needs. And so for Guilbeault, the Liberals, to come out and now want to apply a supposed cap on emissions, it really is actually not so much a cap on emissions, but actually it's a cap on jobs. It's a cap on, a high-paying jobs that Canadians depend on. It's a cap on Canada being able to meet its potential in terms of output and generating dollars that would go into building roads and schools and bridges and critical infrastructure that Canadians depend on. Ultimately, that is what this is a cap on. It's a cap on our prosperity as a nation and as the individual people who live here and call this place home. So make no mistake, this policy is going to do very little, if anything, to protect the environment. We already have some of the world's best environmental policies in place when it comes to oil and gas. This is simply just another Liberal attack on the people of this country who work incredibly hard.
Premier Daniel Smith and the UCP have also hinted that they may be suing the federal government once again over this potential emissions cap. They want to be 35% less than the 2019 levels. What are your thoughts?
I commend Premier Smith on her advocacy for the people of Alberta. You know, she's certainly wanting to make sure that they have every opportunity to thrive. And so her gumption to be able to go up against the establishment in Ottawa and to defend the interests of our province, I think is the right thing. I believe that she is acting in the best interest of those that have elected her. She clearly has a mandate to act in the way that she is. And I think that, you know, should she be successful, it will definitely serve Albertans well.
Now, we've heard your leader, Pierre Poilievre, say time and time again that after 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, millions more Canadians are now going to food banks because they're having a really tough time making ends meet. Now, Poilievre says he has a plan to help Canadians meet their basic needs. Rachel, what does that plan really look like for your party?
Yeah, look, we know that Canadians are worse off than they have been in at least 40 years. And of course, that's due to the government that's currently in place, led by Prime Minister Trudeau. Unfortunately, he's just made decisions to spend carelessly. And as a result, inflation has been driven up, interest rates have been driven up. And as a result, Canadians are paying more than ever before. I'm hearing from people who are coming into my office who, you know, they're having to make difficult decisions between paying their utility bill or paying for food or properly feeding their families. Um, in terms of a conservative plan, our plan is really common sense. If you rein in the spending and you make sure that you're responsible, spending within your means only, then of course that reduces inflation. Further to that, you know, we would be introducing a dollar for dollar rule. So if we're going to spend an extra dollar, then we have to find a dollar of savings when we're in government. And you know, I think as well, we've made it very clear that we intend to scrap the carbon tax. That'll be our first order of business when we form government. And we know that this is costing Canadians, you know, a ton of money. It's adding to their gas bill, their grocery bill, their utilities bill. Everything costs more because of the carbon tax. So, of course, we look forward to taking an axe to that and getting rid of it altogether for all time.
Now, since being elected south of the border, Rachel, Donald Trump says he's bringing forth legislation to have millions of illegal immigrants deported. And some believe a number of those illegal immigrants who've not been vetted properly will make their way to Canada. Some of those illegal immigrants having criminal records, maybe even jihadists. Should we really be concerned here in our country about a lot of those illegals making their way over across the border?
The first order of any government should be the safety and security of its citizens, which means ultimately securing our borders and making sure that immigration processes are followed properly. Canada has an incredibly robust and compassionate immigration system traditionally. Under this government, however, it has been absolute chaos. And so, unfortunately, we have seen many illegal immigrants come into the country, and some of those individuals pose a threat. You know, so just recently, we know that there were two former ISIS fighters who came into this country and they were granted citizenship. And they went on to then plot a terrorist attack in Toronto. It was discovered then that one of these individuals actually dismembered someone in 2015 with a sword and then posted it on media for people to see. That's very blatant. That's very obvious that that individual should not have been granted citizenship. So, you know, Canadians are asking, well, what is the vetting process? Why was this individual not, not caught? Why was this not known? How did this individual end up being granted an opportunity to come to Canada, let alone become a citizen of this country? And so clearly there's a great deal of work that needs to be done with regards to how people are vetted and allowed to take the oath of citizenship in this country. And I think Canadians are rightly concerned with how things are going right now under Trudeau, and they're certainly asking for change. And so as Conservatives, we're committed to restoring our immigration system to what it once was, which was, you know, a system that was based on fairness, a system that was based on rules and procedures and protocols, and ultimately a system that served our country well economically.
So, Rachel, many Canadians are also quite concerned over Donald Trump's protectionist policies. Buy American, American jobs first. It's understandable. He's the leader of that country. But if your party forms government in the next federal election, how will you really work with Donald Trump to ensure that he doesn't go ballistic with tariffs, including on our softwood lumber?
Yeah, it's certainly a good question. We know that, you know, President Trump has every intention of making sure that he protects the interests of America. Um, At the same time, here in Canada, we should have a leader who's advocating for the best interests of Canadians. Unfortunately, under Trudeau, we don't have that. But the good news is an election is coming and we will form a new government under Pierre Poilievre. And he does have the interest of Canadians in mind. And so I think with that, we're wanting to scrap the carbon tax because we know that it's causing jobs to go south of the border. We know that it's penalizing us. In addition to that, we're looking to make sure that people are able to bring home powerful paychecks, and we're looking to make sure that jobs are saved, and ultimately to stand up for the interests of Canadians. Part of that is reaching out and building a relationship with Trump and his administration. And I think we are already putting a plan in place in terms of what that might look like.
Now, another question I have for you is the federal government here in Canada has been giving billions of dollars to Ukraine in their fight against Russia. Many of us very definitely want to support Ukraine as Russia has invaded that country, a sovereign nation. But then a lot of other Canadians are saying, why not help Canadians here at home first? Our veterans, our homeless, those battling addictions. Why not keep the money here internally in our country and help millions of Canadians first before sending off so many billions of tax dollars to other nations? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a difficult predicament that we find ourselves in. As a country, we've committed to being generous in humanitarian efforts and of course, supporting our allies. And so we have contributed to the efforts, in particular toward Ukraine. At the same time, we certainly have Canadians who are struggling here, whether it's with mental health or with addiction, with homelessness, and those needs also need our attention. So I think these are the difficult conversations that we need to continue having at a leadership level, but also leaning in and listening closely to Canadians and making sure that we know where they stand on these issues and then acting accordingly.
Now, the latest polls show the Conservative Party of Canada is close to a 20-point lead over the Trudeau Liberals. Rachel, how can you really maintain that momentum heading into the next election? Or do we have to maybe wait until Jagmeet Singh qualifies for his pension before heading to the polls?
Well, obviously Pierre Poilievre has been working very, very hard as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. He's out every single day meeting with regular folks and making sure that he's hearing their stories and understanding their experiences. He's someone who has great stamina and a great passion for this country and its people. And so you asked the question, can that be maintained? Absolutely it can, because it comes from the very core of his being. He loves the nation of Canada and he's passionate about making sure that the people are served well. He's also incredibly hardworking and he has smart policy. And so coming forward with good options for Canadians, I think is really what's going to help him as we continue to prepare for the next election and, of course, earn the trust of Canadians.
Why do you think a lot of Conservative policies have really been resonating in Liberal strongholds, traditional strongholds like Toronto? I mean, especially winning that Toronto by-election. Why do you think that's happening more in central Canada now?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think it has to do with the fact that, Pierre Poilievre, as the leader of the Conservatives, is putting his feet on the ground and really listening to folks. He's having conversations with regular individuals, whether it's at gas stations or grocery stores or workplaces. He's engaging with people where they're at and taking the time to understand what they're concerned about. And so as Conservatives, I believe that we've prioritized those things that matter most to Canadians. We're committed to axing the tax. We're committed to building homes, which we know is much needed. We're committed to fixing the budget, which we know is totally out of control and causing inflation like never before. And we're committed to stopping the crime, which we know is running rampant and it's causing people to feel unsafe because, quite frankly, they are unsafe because there's crime that is just skyrocketing. And so that needs to be taken care of. And so I think these are the issues that matter most to Canadians, and they're the issues that we're responding to as Conservatives.
Yeah, let's talk about gun crime. And we've seen a huge increase across the country, especially in major centers like Toronto and Vancouver over the last few years. What approach would your party take differently compared to the Liberals in addressing so many of the violent crimes here in Canada?
Yeah, we know that violent gun crime is up by 116%. So it's skyrocketed. We know that this is having an impact on the safety and well-being of communities, and it's not it's not just some communities. It really is all communities across the country are affected by this, at least in some way. Mr. Trudeau came out just a couple weeks ago bragging about his handgun ban and the legislation that he's put in place with regards to firearms. At the end of the day, we know that that legislation actually only went against those who legally own their firearm and use their firearm responsibly. It didn't go after criminals. And the reason we know that is because actually multiple police associations came out and actually attacked Trudeau on his claim. They actually wanted to clear the record. They wanted to set it straight. So for example, in Toronto, the police association came out and actually said, sir, Mr. Trudeau, the rates of gun crime are actually skyrocketing in comparison to what they were before the Liberals' legislation. So we're seeing where there's a disconnect. I think Trudeau is more interested in appearing like he's creating safety for Canadians than actually creating safety for Canadians. In fact, his legislation, it only worked to divide Canadians. It only worked to attack or scapegoat those individuals who use their firearms for hunting or sports shooting, or for Indigenous folks who also have rifles and often use them for hunting, et cetera, as well. That's not an effective law. At the end of the day, Canadians are not safer because of Trudeau. They're actually put into greater harm.
Conservative MP Rachel Thomas, thanks so much for your time today and for joining us from your home in Lethbridge.
Thank you, Hal. Good to be with you.
Well, if you just mention the phrase coal mining, it won't take very long to get some negative comments or even dirty looks coming your way. But is coal mining necessarily always a bad thing? Besides the cons, are there some pros? Well, today's guests are going to share an interesting perspective. Joining me today from the Crow's Nest Pass in southern Alberta are Carmen and Troy Linderman. Carmen is the Director of Citizens Supportive of Crow's Nest Pass. So welcome to Bridge City News, you two. Thanks so much for being here. Great to have you on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, so maybe why don't we start off by having you give an overview of what your organization is about and what it's hoping to accomplish.
So we're a nonprofit organization that supports metallurgical coal mining in our area. We're made up of local citizens, and we think that with responsible mining and modern mining techniques that we can mine our resources responsibly, and our town could benefit from it. So we live in the area. We love the area. We wouldn't want to see anything bad happen to it. My grandkids swim in the rivers, and so yeah, we're supportive. We think we can do it responsibly.
Okay, interesting. So I believe you want viewers to understand that you're not planning on developing a whole new coal mine, right? But rather just restarting an abandoned coal mine?
Right. Grassy Mountain was abandoned about 60 years ago, and it never ever did get reclaimed. So our hopes is we can mine what's left of the met coal there. Met coal is used for making steel. And if we can do that responsibly, it will actually get reclaimed.
Okay. Well, I believe we have some drone footage of the actual abandoned coal mine, and I think that this might help viewers get a better idea of what the situation is out there, but maybe talk a little bit about Grassy Mine.
Yeah, so it's not pristine wilderness by no means. Like I say, it's an old coal mine, and it holds world class, some of the best metallurgical coal in the world, and if they mine it, the company that mines it is responsible for doing the reclamation, so it would get cleaned up. And then that land would become usable again.
Okay, and also this isn't a thermal coal mine for use for fuel, right? But a metallurgical coal, like you said, to be used to produce steel. So why is this an important difference, Carmen?
There's two completely different uses for metallurgical coal, or steel-making coal is what it's commonly referred to as, and thermal coal. Thermal coal is used for fuel. It's used for generating power. Metallurgical coal, as Carmen has stated, is used for making steel. And one of the biggest differences is that with thermal coal, or energy producing coal. There's alternatives. There's natural gas, there's solar, there's wind power. For making steel, there really is no alternative. Metallurgical coal needs to be mixed with iron ore to create steel, and the demand for world steel is only going up. And the supply of metallurgical coal is going down. So you could see a problem coming. So we support this on those bases and on the basis of the reclamation and the benefits to the community.
Okay, well, you spoke of benefits. So what are the benefits of a coal mine to a community like the Crow's Nest Pass?
Well, I think it'll revitalize our community. It'll provide high-paying jobs, mortgage-paying jobs, which is really important. It'll provide our youth with opportunities for, like there's lots of things that go into a coal mine. It's not just truck drivers. So there's electricians, there's mechanics, environmentalists, so it'll provide our youth and local and surrounding area with opportunities to have those jobs. It'll lower our taxes, and also it'll attract families to our community. We're a community of the elderly, so we have a lot of elderly folks here, and yeah, it would be nice to have our kids, a reason for our kids to stay.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. So how many jobs do you estimate this could bring to the pass, including spin-off jobs?
Well, I believe it'll be hundreds of jobs. So like I say, there's all sorts of different jobs that go in with mining, and then there's the service companies that you need, and vehicle rentals and fuel, and you want to expand?
I think one of the biggest pieces is the infrastructure needed to support something like this. It'll be a very big benefit to the Crow's Nest Pass to get that infrastructure, because currently I believe our infrastructure is lacking or is dated, and that in itself spins off jobs, and that infrastructure can be used for other industries as well, like tourism. So I think Carmen's correct. It will be in the hundreds. There'll be a construction phase, which will be hundreds for sure, and then once the mine starts operating, I think even in the mine itself will be close to 300, and then the spin-off jobs, like she stated.
Mm-hmm. And there will certainly be obviously some questions raised as to what kind of impact it will have on the water supply and carbon emissions. So how would you address those concerns?
So the government sets the standards on what's allowable, and anything outside those standards gets shut down, right? So they have to mine it responsibly. And today we're global leaders in resource extraction in Canada, in Alberta, right? So it's better, like Troy was saying, we need the met coal. It's better that we get it from here versus somewhere else where they don't have those environmental standards. I read an article the other day about kids mining coal in Iran. It's heartbreaking, right? When you think about that, and the need for the met coal is it's there. It's going to come from somewhere. So why don't we do it where we can do it responsibly?
Yeah, it's true. And I think sometimes we forget that coal in Alberta is actually produced in an ethical manner, right? As compared to some of these other mining companies in other parts of the world. And like you said, where they use child labor in some of those instances, that is heartbreaking. Yeah. So one angle that your website brings up is that our neighbors to the west, British Columbia, produce far, far more coal than Alberta does.
They sure do. They are blessed with high quality metallurgical coal as well. And the deposits are very similar, and it's one of the top 5 in the world. So it is a very high quality burning coal for making steel. And they're just on the other side of the continental divide here, and they can do it responsibly. And they've shown that. And of course, they're always improving technologies, and there's no reason why in Alberta we can't be benefiting from this as well. With, again, like Carmen stated, with the technology, the modern mining techniques, the regulations, we can get that high quality metallurgical coal out of the ground.
So what about concerns that coal mining could negatively affect tourism, like the landscape and the wildlife, or is that not a concern at all?
Well, where it sits right now is unabandoned coal mines. So nobody's using, well, it's private property actually. So, I mean, nobody's recreating up there. It's definitely needs to be cleaned up. So, we have an abundance of trails and we have a ski hill. There's a park just to the south of us. And um,
There's no reason they can't coexist. And again, we mentioned the infrastructure in the Crow's Nest Pass is a little bit lacking, where we think this is a huge opportunity for a company to come in and build this, but then not only that, build the infrastructure to support things like tourism. We love, we love having people come and visit our community. We have for many years. I've lived here my whole life, but we need more of that infrastructure in place to support the more people coming. And unfortunately, it's lacking and it's very expensive to implement. So we need that community support. They need to coexist. There needs to be a balance to other industry like tourism and this mine.
So to any degree, would there be dust and noise impacting the surrounding communities, do you think?
Well, again, I think that goes back to the rules and regulations that the government sets out, that they have to abide by certain standards, dust, noise, environmental, and if they don't do it, then they get shut down. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So what do you say to those who might be concerned about land reclamation?
So I think this is a real big opportunity to actually fix a wrong that happened 50 to 60 years ago. I think with modern mining techniques and modern environmental practices and reclamation practices, this could be a real positive. At the end of the day, we believe, or we've been advised, that they will reclaim land as they disrupt it, and it's already disrupted. So this this could be a real positive. And then as well, so it's shown that some of the best wildlife and recreation areas are on previously mined or used industrial sites. So we're actually excited that in at the end of this mine, we'll have an area that is really good for recreating and for wildlife.
If any viewers wanted to join in with your vision, how would they go about doing that?
So you could go onto our website. We encourage you to check it out. It's crowsnestcoal.org. You can sign up on there and receive our emails, newsletters, updates, and yeah, if you would like to become an active member in our group, send us an email and we'll be in contact.
Interesting. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Carmen and Troy. Very interesting conversation there.
Thank you so much for having us.
Carmen and Troy Linderman are part of Citizens Supportive of Crow's Nest Coal. Great to have you on today.
Often we hear people talking about looking forward to the retirement years and enjoying the free time available as a senior. However, as we age, there are often many challenges that come with that, including health and mobility. So whose job is it to come alongside our seniors and lend a helping hand? Joining us today to discuss this is Tim Syme. He is the seniors pastor at the Evangelical Free Church in Lethbridge. Good to have you with us, Pastor Tim.
Thank you. Glad to be doing that.
Well, welcome back to Bridge City News, and you work with seniors regularly. So what are some of the top concerns you hear from seniors? I'm guessing that loneliness would be up there.
It sure is, but the reality is, from my perspective, trying to get seniors to identify what's the cause of the loneliness, because they're going through huge transitions in their lives, and many of those things, the loss of mobility, health limitations. The big one for men is you take your driver's license away when you've been driving for 60 or 70 years. It's a shocking thing for people. So it's what is causing the loneliness, loss of a spouse. All of those things can push us to that. But I think they have to identify that in order to move ahead.
So what makes them lose their driver's license? Is it just the mobility issues?
Oh, just your ability to think fast enough is usually what comes to the seniors on that. They can't discern quick enough how quickly traffic's moving or those things. And a couple of scary incidents are what usually lead to the family finally saying, "Dad, you really have to take this step." And so it's a big step in that sense. My grandmother, as she aged, and she wanted to know who had invented the term golden years, because she wanted it identified and held accountable, because she didn't find those years as golden as she had been promised. And I understood that a little bit at the time, but even more now.
Now, hopefully, we have relatives and friends who will take the time to visit, but for some individuals, family members may not be nearby. I think it's a great opportunity for younger people, including teens, to visit seniors, even complete strangers. Your thoughts on that, Tim?
Oh, absolutely. Family's the number one source. If they're not available, we prioritize our seniors on that basis. And our youth pastor came to us 2 or 3 years ago and said she would like the seniors to meet with the youth, high school. And we thought, well, sure, we have never done that. Let's do that. So we organized. The seniors brought all the desserts. So the youth came and ate all the desserts. But we sat around round tables and there were questions there about seniors telling stories about their first trip or where they lived or different things in their life. And the young people could share questions and thoughts and ideas. We've done that twice, and it's already on the schedule for the third year because it was really well accepted by both of those generations. It was a good idea, and what it leads to saying hi when you're in a bigger group. If you see somebody that you've talked to, you can at least take 2 minutes to, how's your school going, or how's that taking place? So it's been a good thing.
And talking about young people still, it's always great when young people make time to help seniors figure out their tech stuff like computers and cell phones. The interesting thing seems to be when this happens, there's often an exchange of sorts with seniors having the opportunity to share some stories and wisdom with the younger generation.
Yes, yes. We, my wife and I, we're in that generation. So whenever the grandkids come over, here's the problems we're facing with the computer and the phone, and we can interact over that issue. But the seniors at large find that to be and we have some really techie young people who said, if somebody's locked up with something and they don't have grandchildren or somebody around, let us know. And that's a great resource. We have used them at least 2 or 3 times where we've sent them to visit with somebody and help them to take care of an issue. And that's a real bridge builder.
And when people feel lonely and isolated, this can make it easy to fall into the self-pity trap. Any advice for seniors on how to keep a positive outlook on life?
Well, I think your use of the word as a trap is absolutely essential to understand that. It's like a warning flag being waved. And when we talk to seniors or I interact with them, I try to, again, help them to identify that as something which is wrong and get to the source of it. Because it's like when your smoke alarm goes off in your house, you should get up and go check. Is that a fire, or is that just your toast that you forgot about on the counter? But when a warning flag comes, you should want to know what's happening. And so we try to then lead our seniors into, is there something taking place that's new or different? And leading you to kind of like feeling overwhelmed, because that's really what self-pity is.
And do you ever see seniors take the extra free time that they now have to reach out to a child or teen who may be struggling and mentor that young person? Maybe they need help with school assignments, or maybe they just have some behavioral issues that they may need help with.
Yes, one of the things I've discovered about seniors, at least those that I'm connected with, is that they still love to serve and help in a way that they can. There's some things they can't do anymore, but they can step in. We have some seniors that are doing tutoring, and we have others that are just available to, offer those words of encouragement at that level. But they love to serve. Most of our ministries, and I keep a running track of that, have seniors involved in the volunteerism because they bring a wealth of experience. As long as you don't live in 1972, you're trying to live in 2020s. You can have something to say, and you can play a role, and that's a valuable thing. And when you're actually doing something that serves into your own spiritual and emotional health in that sense.
And do you observe seniors struggling with their identity and purpose in life now that they're no longer working? I remember, like, my time working at McDonald's, there was like seniors that were working the breakfast shift, and it gave them like a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning. Same with like when you see the greeters at Walmart. Can we wrestle with feelings of not having value that when we feel no longer needed?
Yes, I think that's one of the greatest things seniors have to be prepared for, because if you lose your sense of purpose, it just creates a lot of other things that come along. Years ago, I read a book. I think Bob Buford wrote the book, The Second Half of Life, and he kind of took, okay, you've lived to this point. Now you're going to go into the second half of your life. It's kind of business oriented, that what's going to be your next career after you've successfully done something for years. But I've applied those principles to seniors as they approach that. What's going to be your plan for retirement? Because retirement and doing nothing is really a dangerous place to be. But we have all kinds of connections with all of our community, food banks and everything that's taking place here, thrift shops, the MCC, and our seniors just flood those places with service, volunteering, and they get the benefit of being out and doing that.
I remember my pastor telling the seniors in the congregation, "You don't retire, you refire."
Yeah.
And for those in long-term care facilities, do you think churches should consider setting up teams to either take turns phoning or even connecting via Zoom to make sure seniors get some visits?
Yes, we have teams that are assigned individually to people in senior homes. And again, we prioritize that on the availability of family and friends. But as people start to look like they're getting isolated with family because they're not here, and unfortunately, some families just don't step up. But we watch that, and if somebody's sliding into that category, they're assigned a visitor who sees them every week or 2 weeks, and they visit and feed information back as to how we can be helping more specifically. And those visitors, we have people that drive people to appointments, bring them groceries. They just phone the office. We have people that are signed up for doing a little task like that. And it makes a big difference when we can supply a practical need, and those become very, very essential.
And we were talking about driving a little bit earlier in our interview, and you just touched on it in your last answer there. But the sad reality is that for some seniors, driving is no longer an option for them. So, yeah, a great opportunity to offer to get groceries for them or drive them and accompany them to the store.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a very practical step, and people are willing to do that. In fact, it's other seniors who really step up. They have a lot of peer care for each other. And those that are driving and they still have great mobility and they can do all those things, we match them up so that they can have somebody they can call, and these people are really glad to help. It's just a matter of getting the information, and it's easy to hold on to that and not want to bother somebody in a way, but we just keep pressing. Nope, we're here. You have to let us know. We want to help you. We are blessed by doing that.
And other areas we could perhaps help seniors with is maybe like some small home repairs, cleaning, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, or maybe even changing a tire, for example. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, oh yes, that just falls into that practical category. Again, that if there's things, and we have a group of men who just work on cars, and uh, so we've encouraged our seniors, if you need advice even about whether something's needed, or they can do something for you. If they can't, they can tell you, yeah, you do need that, and this is what it would look like, just so you feel more confident if you go to a shop and you feel like maybe you're going to be taken advantage of. You know exactly what you're looking for and exactly what you need to have. And so those things make quite the difference in that.
And there could be some reciprocity here too, because seniors can also give advice on home repairs or home maintenance, or, you know, like teach a young person how to change a tire.
Oh, absolutely. I've retired twice, and here I am sitting in my office still part-time doing ministry, which I love because it fulfills my purpose as I do that. And I look at retiring as just retiring from a position and then looking for what else God has as next. And I had no intention that this would be what I'd be doing right now, but it's a perfect fit, and I'm having a great time and being blessed by the seniors because they go through some deep waters. And when I'm there with them and I see their faith working so strongly, it gives me courage for the future as I will face other issues that will come along. Their faith comes through at the end. They finish well.
And from your observations, what are some things that seem to make seniors thrive? And what are some things that we do or don't do that seem to cause seniors to struggle?
I think the biggest struggle is it coming to a place of being labeled or thinking, you know, you're kind of past everything. You have nothing more to offer. If they start to feel that, I think that's the greatest struggle that seniors can face when they begin to feel like, why am I here anymore? You know, from that perspective, I used to do all these things. My wife's mother was in a dementia care center for a number of years. And one of the things I loved about that particular center was they had a huge plaque on the front of every door, pictures of that patient, that client. When they were younger, it gave information what they did with their work career, their education, pictures of their family. So you walked in there, it wasn't just a senior who was really unable to kind of even communicate properly. It was a human who had lived a very productive life. They had been a professor at some incredible school somewhere. They didn't, now they're in a stage where they could just be labeled as an old person taking up space. But I really appreciated what they did with that.
Tim Syme is the seniors pastor at the Evangelical Free Church in Lethbridge. Good to have you with us again, Pastor Tim.
You bet. Glad to help.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.